Okay, there's so much I want to tell you about this week, and part of me kind of just wants to start with this absolutely insane horror novel that I read that my friend recommended me, but I think we need to keep some continuity in these videos, stick to an order. So we're going to start with the most recent writing updates. Hi, I'm Asa. If it's your first time here, I wrote 6 sermons, the Audible original starring Stephanie Shu, and now I am writing a novel. It's my very first novel. That project for Audible was a scripted series. This is where I'm talking about it. And so these videos, we start with writing updates, we go to reading, and then at the end, I talk about something that I learned this week from, what I've been working on. RE writing updates. It's been kind of, honestly, one of the more profound weeks in my writing life, which sounds so hyperbolic, but I really have to say that I feel like I'm going back to the beginning as a writer. I have had success. I've written great things I'm really proud of. I've learned so much over the years, but the bottom line is that writing a book is so different than writing a script. My background is in theater and screenplays, and fundamentally, for prose is just such a different thing, and the rhythm of it and the life of it and the experience of it is so fundamentally different. And going into this novel, I had this idea that it's like, oh, okay, you know how to tell a story, structure up and down, how to build a character, totally, you got this. But now I'm just like, you don't got this. You don't. And so what I'm trying to do now, and what I've been doing this week, is kind of building a writing life that empowers me, that gives me confidence to try to write this book that I have a vision for. It's a psychological horror thriller. The working title is Bully. It sort of maps the experience of deafness. I'm deaf, totally deaf in one ear, onto a horror thriller. It's going to be really great, but I've realized that I've started to, it's like trying to run a marathon without training, because I just haven't written that much prose. So I'm going all the way back to basics. Last week I worked on a short story. There was only 1,200 words, a really modest short story, but it felt so good, and I was able to complete it. I revised it this week, which ended up gutting it, kind of redid it, but ended up with a piece of fiction, and it made me think of kind of the way people learn art. I think to this day, if you go to an art school, it's like they start with lines. They start with basic line drawings and still lifes, and like, I don't know exactly how it is, but I think it's like this elementary ideas that even the most kind of experimental or contemporary artists, like, that's the beginnings of their training. And, that's how Michelangelo and the rest of them learned how to draw and eventually make their insane work. So that's kind of where I'm at as a writer. It's like, okay, let's learn how to draw a line. Let's learn how to paint some fruit in a bowl. And I need to keep working on Bully. It's in me. It needs to come out right now. And I'm going to keep working on it, but I'm realizing that I also need to be drawing lines, doing this kind of more introductory work, so that my muscles and my endurance in terms of prose can get to where it needs to be, so that I can run that marathon, which is this novel that I'm working on. So that's been the big kind of writing update of the week. It's been a really special week. It's been, like I said, so humbling, and I'm so excited to kind of begin this journey. It's liberating, really. It's like it's like that experience of a new beginning. It's like I'm starting something totally new, and that's been energizing. Next, what I was reading this week, I have an exceptional book to share with you. So, as a great story, a dear friend here in Mexico was traveling, and she came back from Greece and gave me this book. It's called The Murderess. And this is a Greek novel by, oh gosh, I'm just going to put his name on the screen because it's like 8 syllables. Anyway, this book was written, I want to say, early 1900s. What are we looking at here? I think, 1903, okay? And I thought this was just, when this gift was given to me, I was very grateful. This is a dear friend. But as for the book itself, I thought that this was like, okay, cool, like used bookstore find, weird translation of an old Greek book, and it is so much more than that. This book is absolutely insane. It's called The Murderess, A Social Tale, and it is sort of this kind of beta social horror. I mean, it really brought to mind something like Get Out or Barbarian, just like a explicitly sort of metaphoric, allegorical kind of horror project. And, I'm not going to give away the whole thing. Within early pages, this woman who's an older woman, she's a grandmother, she murders her own grandbaby out of sort of an impulse of her daughter doesn't have the financial means to take care of this baby who's a little girl. And in this society at that time, having little girls was really challenging because you had to provide dowries and they became this enormous financial burden. And, it made me think of kind of on some like farmers drowning puppies type vibe. There's a really good Seamus Heaney poem about that, where it's just like, you got to get it done, which obviously you can't because these are human beings. And so just kind of like that amazing kind of commitment to this one idea that leads to this novel called The Murderess was astonishing. I'm so excited to find additional translations. This is kind of an older translation. I want to read the new one and see how that compares and contrasts, and just to have the experience of reading this book again. I guess that is sort of this silver lining gift of reading in translation, is that you can experience the story afresh. The Iliad, for example, is a book I really love, and kind of, when you get to read that in different translations, it's sort of like, ooh, it's kind of like experiencing it for the first time again, which is really cool, even though obviously the essence is completely unattainable at some level because it is in another language. Other stuff I read this week, I broke the seal, my personal first time with H.P. Lovecraft. I had sort of avoided Lovecraft on account of his sort of legendary racism and xenophobia. But, with every time you read that sense about Lovecraft, you also read how foundational he is to contemporary horror. And so I knew at some point I had to take the plunge, and that plunge I did take. And this particular short story, The Horror of Red Hook, is in conversation with this more contemporary novel, The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. And, this is sort of a reimagining of Laval's story. The Ballad of Black Tom is a reimagining of The Horror of Red Hook. Very cool pieces, both. They're both short. You could read both of them in a day. And so that's just, kind of recommend those as like sort of sister pieces, but I have to concede that I kind of get it with Lovecraft. I'm like, oh, this is what people are talking about, this cosmic horror. Oh, that in our bones, like there's nothing. There's the ghosts and demons, that is kind of baby stuff compared to the horror of being alive in general. And so that was a really powerful introduction. I'm looking forward to reading more Lovecraft, his problematic nature fully acknowledged and aside, which is also kind of interesting in its own way to read. Ghost stories, Tanana Reeve-Du, short stories. We're having a short story moment, so we're reading short stories. I took a seminar by her last week that was great, so reading her. And then moving on to the third part of this video, what I'm learning. And I kind of was able this week to engage with something I had read about in terms of endings, specifically kind of surprise endings that, I'd heard before, but I unlocked in a new way. So, Aristotle famously, a good ending is both surprising and totally expected. In hindsight, oh yeah, of course it ends this way, but in the moment, it totally takes you by surprise. Now, this kind of conception of an ending often comes from a character being in a kind of like decision where two clear things can happen, right? Let me use an example to help it be more clear. So the last thing I read this week, or another thing I read this week, were these I'm reading these Japanese ghost stories. They're super fun, kind of like folk tales. And in this one story, let me lay it out for you. There's a woodcutter who gets visited at night by some kind of witchy demon kind of figure. She lets him live. She kills the other woodcutter who's with him and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to let you live. But if ever you tell someone about this night, if you ever tell anyone about me or how I let you live, I'll come and I'll kill you. Those are the initial terms of the story, right? And so kind of the dramatic question that's put before us is he going to reveal that? Is he going to do what he wasn't supposed to do and die? Or is he going to keep the secret and live? The story actually does neither of those things. So the boy, this 18-year-old, grows up. He ends up marrying this beautiful woman. We're in kind of folklore land. She's beautiful. She's this. She's lovely. This perfect wife, and has, children, a family, da-da-da-da. He's happy as a clam. And then finally one night he reveals to his wife, gosh, there's this thing that happened to me, da-da-da-da-da. And we're thinking, oh my God, is this woman that woman? And sure enough, it is. And the expectation here is that she's going to kill him right now. But she doesn't. Instead, she leaves him. And she says, you know what? I'd kill you right now, but we have all these kids. So you better take care of them. And if you don't, I'm going to kill you. She leaves. She takes off, abandons him, and she's gone and never to be seen again. And so there at the end, something happened that was totally unexpected. He didn't keep it a secret. And he did reveal it, but instead of getting killed, something else happened. There was this third path, which is that she leaves him. She tells him, hey, you know what? If it weren't for these kids, I'd kill you, but we have these children and you need to take care of them. But I'm the love of your life and you just screwed it up. I'm gone. And so for me, this was this cool articulation, this distilled articulation of that fundamental idea of an ending being both surprising and inevitable. It cinches the story together, but you never were expecting it. I'll see you next week.